Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Sagar Nandrajog, your host for today's webinar. It gives me immense pleasure welcoming you all to a live webinar on the theme of Safeguard Your Enterprise Against Ransomware Attacks. This webinar is hosted by Cyber Media Research in association with SonicWall. For the duration of presentation, all participant lines will be in listen-only mode. After the presentation, we'll be having a question and answer session. Your feedback is very important for us. Please submit your feedback at the end of the session. Now, I would like to hand over the floor to Mr. Apalak Ghosh, Principal Consultant, Emerging Technologies Research, Infotech Practice, CMR, who will share his insights on ransomware attacks. Thank you, and over to you, sir.
Thank you, Sagar. A very, very warm welcome to all our participants who have joined in from all parts of the country. Right. As we all know, Cyber Media Research is a fully owned subsidiary of Cyber Media Group, right? Very well known for its publications like DataQuest, PCQuest, Voice and Data. So we are the market research and consulting wing to Cyber Media Group, right? So off and on, we undertake webinars and events on a particular topic or area which seems to be of particular interest to our audience, right? And today, as you can all clearly see, we are going to talk about ransomware. So, and I think needless to say that this is an area that has been of much significance, much talked about over the last couple of months. We've been attacked by, it was first by WannaCry, then we had a Bad Rapid incident. So let's understand what ransomware is. I'm sure most of you who have dialed in today would love to understand more about ransomware. So the session, how we would map out is, I'll give you a basic pilot in terms of how Cyber Media Research looks at this particular space, how it's grown over the last couple of years. And we'll take a deep dive through our principal partner for this particular session, SonicWall, and we have Brooke with us who will be taking you through the session. Post which we are going to follow it up with the Q&A. Kindly note down all your questions that you have during this course of the webinar. We'll be more than happy to undertake all the questions once my session and Brooke's session is over, right? So taking this discussion forward, so my second slide, as you can see, is I have 4 things in front of you, Can you identify what is the common feature amongst all these 4? King Richard, the Lion-Hearted, the Lindbergh Baby, the painting called the Scream, and everyone knows Charlie Chaplin. Charlie Chaplin's corpse. So basically after he was cremated, so there was his corpse. So what is the 4 things which have a common thread amongst these 4 things? Any guesses? Probably had I been in a physical event, you might have raised your hands and probably given me an answer. But let me give you a big cue. The big cue here is it has got something to do with what we're talking today. So the answer is all were held for ransom. So this is the side. I don't want to read out to the entire thing. If you can see, for instance, in 1978, Chaplin's grave was robbed and coffin was taken. Likewise, in 1994, the painting by Edward Munch, the Scream, was stolen, and the thief demanded about $1 million. So typically, ransom as a concept, right, is not new. Ransom is probably as old as mankind itself. It follows a familiar format, right? And typically, the threat is to deny access or to destroy an item. Now, and the concept of ransom has crept into our world of technology as well, right? So there are no guarantees in a ransom situation. Sometimes you pay and still the item gets lost. Sometimes you pay and you get what you want or what you desire. And sometimes you don't pay and the item still gets lost, right? So typically, that is a situation, right? Now, typically, going forward, as you can see, we've been attacked by ransomware at an overall global level, and India has also witnessed the same, right? This slide particularly talks about the kind of ransomware attacks that have affected globally. As you can see, cyber attack hits 10,000 patients' healthcare data, ransomware affecting PCs in Japan, hackers gone wild, Hong Kong cybersecurity incident up 43% in 2015 as website attacks lead 4-fold. So this, as you all know, is something which is not new to us, right? We are living in a situation, we are living in a world where ransomware is very real, and this might impact you, me, or any organization which has got its entity and living in a connected world. So how do we manage it, and what is ransomware? So typically ransomware are, resources such as files which are made unavailable to the rightful owner. And typically the process that I'll take you in the further slides, typically they encrypt the data, your data, and you're not able to access them, right? And to decrypt the file, the ransom has to be paid. And there are times also, there is a time duration for you to pay up. If you don't pay up, they block the data, right? So, and this could be funded, depending on the level of play that you're reaching out to. It could be a government role, it could be a private party's role, it could be a pure hacktivism where they want to limit your access to the important documents that you have, right? So here is typically an example of what I just told you. As you can see, here is a snapshot of a ransomware attack. See, the time left is 56 minutes. It could be 56 minutes, 16 seconds, or it could be 56 hours and 16 minutes left, because your data is right now blocked, it is encrypted, and in order to decrypt the data, either you pay up, and that's once you pay up, and you can see to obtain the private key for this computer, which will automatically decrypt files, you need to pay 100 USD / 100 euros or a similar amount in another currency. So once you do that, there is still not an assurity that you'll get your data back, right? So this is the extent to which ransomware can really paralyze the IT department, because that's in the core of it all, and in the next phase, the entirety of the organization, right? Typically, the types of ransomware that I like to highlight here, and I'm sure Brooke will have more depth, as I said, going forward, typically are in crypto ransomware and locker ransomware, right? As I mentioned, in the crypto ransomware, typically the idea is to encrypt the data and files, right? In the locker ransomware, as the name suggests, you are denied access to the computer resource in itself. So it locks the computer, preventing the victims from using it. So either ways, you are compelled to either pay or to witness in front of your eyes a situation where you are not getting access to your own data, right? So, and typically the way these attacks happen either are through emails or through web. And somewhere it is very interesting to note, while technology has a very important and critical role to play to avoid such situations, but our understanding of particularly the Indian market also suggests that while technology is a very critical piece, you've got to have the people and the processes in place as well, right? So typically in email and web, as you can see through an email ransomware attack, typically it is used there are two primary vectors for the attacks to happen, right? But having said so, like every incidence of malware or ransomware attack, you need to have a mitigation strategy. I think the most basic mitigation strategy, regardless of whether you have the technology settings or whether you are succinct in order to avoid a ransomware attack, is to have backups. Imagine if you have a really robust backup or DR policy, and your data gets encrypted by a ransomware attack. It would not make too much of an impact on you if you have a backup or a DR facility which is supporting you. Typically, the challenge we have seen over the last couple of years typically is the gentleman who is supposed to secure or is responsible for the security part of the organization is probably working in silos vis-a-vis its BCDR personnel. So it is very important to have conversations with the DR team before a ransomware hits the organization. So, but if you are in sync, if your IT security personnel is in sync with the BCDR guys, I guess regardless of whether we have the technology adoption, at least we're in a better situation to mitigate such strategies, right? So as I was saying, while technology is a very, very critical place, right, it cannot be of full value until and unless the people and processes are in place. So you need to, make your staff aware, and what you do is you do a training process, right? You've got to have professional skills and qualifications to a set of people who can support you in such situations or crisis situations. and definitely have competent resources, right? And from a process point of view, obviously, it goes without saying you need to have a regular updation of your IT frameworks. You have to have a systematic IT audit, right? And to overall manage the entire system, right? So as I said, while Brooke is going to take you forward with the technology landscape of how he's being a veteran in the ransomware sphere, how SonicWall supports this entire functioning, right? From a cyber research, the basic crux is while technology definitely has a very important role to play, but security clearly needs to be more collaborative. The security team needs to work with other teams to not just keep the organization more secure, but it has to be in a collaborative way, right? So that's the short take from my end, right? You'll hear a lot more from Brooke in terms of ransomware. And once we, as I mentioned in the beginning, once we're through with Brooke's session, we'll be open to the Q&A. Please jot down all your questions. We'll be more than happy to answer on your behalf. That's it from my end. Over to you, Sagar, and over to you, Brooke. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Ghosh, for setting up the platform for today's webinar. Now, it's my pleasure to introduce you to the next speaker, Brooke R. Chelmo, Senior Principal Product Marketing Manager, and he will be sharing insights on Safeguard Your Enterprise. Over to you, Mr. Brooke.
Hi, I'm Brooke Chelmo with SonicWall, and I am the SonicWall's ransomware czar. I perform a range of functions from product marketing to product management for our security products. You're welcome to reach out with me at brchelmo on Twitter. It's a good place to get a hold of me. I like to very vocal online about security products, about how security should work, and about some of the latest threats that are out there. I also push out a lot of the things from the threat research team. I sit on the same floor as the threat research team in Santa Clara, California. So because of that close proximity and the good relationship, I'm able to get kind of my feet on the ground floor of the latest threats. So that being said, let's talk about some of the things that we're seeing out there, and of course what we're going to talk about today. So we'll talk about some of today's biggest threats, how we're going to stop them, how we're going to prevent new infections. What I mean here is how we prevent new forms of ransomware that are coming out there. Then, of course, some questions that you can ask your vendor and questions to also ask yourself. So just as I mentioned before, ransomware, of course, is everywhere. It's a major focus for people. We kind of jokingly say that because of ransomware, everyone is going out there to take karate lessons. They want to learn how to defend themselves, which is probably why you are on this webcast today. It's hitting organizations large and small. You don't have to have a large kind of threat plane like a Google or a Facebook or Northrop Grumman or these other large organizations and defense agencies, government, etc. You can be just as small as anybody else. I just completed a case study and a blog with a small town lawyer. She only has 2 people in her law firm. And as a result, she was hit by a ransomware attack, and she thought she was too small to be hit. She had antivirus, she had Norton on her endpoint, that was it, no network security. And as a result, it took over 50 hours to remediate, and the hackers came back a second time and stole the credit card information from her browser. That's when she gave SonicWall a call, but at the end of the day, she's just a small 2-person shop. You're not too small because what are we? We're all digital citizens. We're all neighbors. We are a set of email and IP addresses. They're easily found. They're easily scoured. They're easily pinged. And people are always looking for vulnerabilities. It's everywhere. It's hitting organizations. And, of course, we try to gauge the impact of ransomware based on the Bitcoin. But in reality, we need to gauge the impact of ransomware of what it does to the organization. In the case of NotPetya, we're talking about damages to some organizations as high as $300 million US. So again, it's not just the Bitcoin, it's the impact of the organization. So as we've seen, of course, with WannaCry and NotPetya and a new one called Bad Rabbit, we're seeing kind of this rise of we call malware cocktails, where we're seeing a mixture of things being put together, a mix of old and new come together. For me, I'm seeing these ransomware variants, connected with, say, worms to hit Eternal Blue vulnerabilities. In this case, in the case of Bad Rabbit, there's a hard-coded password database that resides within Bad Rabbit. So once it gets into an organization, it will use the SMB protocol in Windows using the Eternal Romance vulnerability and trying to knock on the door of everybody connected to that network. So, of course, with limited success, the code isn't that very good, but it is taking hold. It is working because a lot of us use the same password on multiple sites. We use easy, cheap passwords, and, again, email addresses are out there easily found. So that being said, how it works is it gets into patient 0. It'll try to spread across the network, and then it will encrypt itself on the way out after it spreads, making a demand. But here at Sonic Wall, we don't want you to be afraid of this stuff. We want you to be confident that we can stop it. In the case of, it doesn't matter if it's Bad Rabbit, it doesn't matter if it's NotPetya, it doesn't matter if it's WannaCry, it doesn't matter if you go out yourself and start minting ransomware today. Here's how we stop it. In the case of, say, Bad Rabbit, we were able to block the NSA tools back in kind of early March 2017, which is very far out there. So it's surprising they're still using this, but they are. In the case of Eternal Romance, we've had that blocked well in advance. In the case of Eternal Blue, that was used in WannaCry and NotPetya, we were able to block that in April, in that case, 3 weeks before the WannaCry attack. So furthermore, we're able to identify the latest forms of ransomware that are out there, and we're able to block those too. Again, if you are able to know it and catalog it, you can stop it. We know about the vulnerabilities. IPS will block that. We know about the ransomware. Gateway security and antivirus will block that. Furthermore, we're able to find the command and control servers these Trojans are pulling their payloads from and blocking those in content filtering. And we also give you the ability to decrypt SSL traffic, because if it is not, if the web traffic is coming through encrypted, you won't be able to read it unless you're able to decrypt it before the firewall. So again, we're going to talk about some best practices today and cover on how we can stay safe in the face of this and give you kind of a good working knowledge of how technology works to stop these things. And again, don't focus too much on the name of the ransomware. Don't focus too much on where it comes from and what the vulnerabilities are here. Just focus on how to stop it. Like they say, if you go and work for a bank, they'll try to teach you to identify what is a real currency and what is fake currency. And one of the best ways to understand counterfeits is to study the real thing. Study the real thing. So when you see counterfeits, they will become very evident to you. And that's the same attitude we're going to have today. We're going to focus on what works, what stops it, and what stops it. So how does it get into an organization? So ransomware is getting to an organization through spam emails, through compromised websites, and through exploits hitting servers. In the case of ransomware, roughly 65% of all attacks happen through phishing emails. In the case of exploit kits, what a lot of these ransomware versions are doing is they're coming to an organization and then they're trying to probe the network, like you see in WannaCry, Bad Rabbit, NotPetya, etc. Furthermore, there's a lot of stuff found on compromised websites. In the case of Bad Rabbit, it's being propagated through a fake Flash update. Now, we see this a lot, and of course, a lot of it was in Russia and Ukraine, but as well as other places like Turkey and even the United States. You know why? Because these are places where people often don't have access to the latest media. A lot of people want to see Game of Thrones. It's good, all these different things are, you hear about new shows and new programming all the time, so people go to pirated sites to try to viewed this material, and as a result, when they go to those websites, it says, oh, you need the latest flash update. You need to use our media player to see this. A lot of times that's not true at all. As a result, they're being infected by stuff, and that's what we're seeing today. So how do we stop it? Here at SonicWall, we use a layered approach to security. We're going to use content filtering, SSL decryption, a strong next-generation firewall, gateway security, a network sandbox, and client antivirus. And I'm going to explain more in just a moment. All of these awards you see on the side here, these are certifications and awards that we've won for the product. But interestingly, I put a bronze award on a slide here. Now, we won gold, and we've also won silver for categories here at SonicWall for our products. But I put a bronze award on that slide. But why? Most people hide their bronze awards in closets. I put it on the front screen because that was awarded to our network sandbox, which had been on the market for only 2 months. Version 1.0 beat competitors who've had solutions on the market for 5 years. Isn't that amazing stuff? And I'm going to talk to you about what that's about and where we've gone from there. But that being said, we're going to use a layered approach to stop ransomware so we have multiple ways to kill it before it gets into the network and onto the endpoint. By the way, if you have any questions, feel free to add these to the chat. So with that being said, why SonicWall? I go to a lot of security presentations all the time. I go to RSA, the main security show and the presentations here in the Bay Area in California, usually February to April, every single year. I talk to vendors around the world all the time, and I ask them a few simple questions. What do you do? Why should I use it? And why should I use it instead of competitor X, Y, or Z? Let me answer that question for you right now. Why SonicWall? First of all, SonicWall has a capture threat network. This is the mixture of the people and the technology that's out there trying to find the latest threats to block them so you don't have to deal with it. We work with over 50 different research organizations around the world. We have over 1 million sensors located around the world, possibly even in your building, on your neighborhood. We have a lot of installations all across India, and we're monitoring this threat traffic 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. It doesn't matter if it's Diwali or if it's Christmas, we're monitoring, we're stopping, we're creating signatures, we're blocking this. Furthermore, it's this team that processes all these new forms of malware. Let me ask you a question. How many new forms of malware did this team process last year? How many new forms, we're talking about variations, updates, et cetera, polymorphic versions of malware that we stopped last year in identifying? The answer is 60 million new forms of ransomware, malware, Trojans, keyloggers, et cetera, 60 million. And we do that through machine learning. We use a deep learning algorithm to try to find the DNA within code to see where it comes from. Believe it or not, I did a DNA test of myself about a year ago, and I discovered that and I'm not joking about this, I am 1% East Indian. That meant 7 generations ago I had a grandfather or great-great-great-grandmother comes from India. Well, we can identify these things today within the human genome, and we're able to use machine learning to see about the code as well. Isn't it very exciting how we do this today? Machine learning is integral to the threat landscape and to and how security works and technology works in the modern world. So now that we explained how we do things, how we process, we have teams and machine learning and all these different things here. Here's what we give you. And all of that work gets poured into these types of technologies, these layers of defense. The first one here is called content filtering. Content filtering is used to stop good people from going to bad places. If your employees, instead of working or they're traveling on a road away from the network, it doesn't matter. We're able to enforce it with content filtering client. Content filtering service is on the network, and you're able to stop people from, say, trying to watch Game of Thrones on the illegal websites. But you can try to do all those different things. I know at SonicWall, you cannot watch Netflix in the office. Netflix will work, but you cannot play video. That's just the way it's designed in the office to help productivity. But in the case of you don't have to go that far with it. You just have to use content filtering to block malicious links. You could block unknown sites or sites coming out of Russia if you want to, or Pakistan if that's a problem for India. Sometimes it is. But that being said, you can use content filtering for that, and we use that. Secondly, we use SSL decryption. That's where we can use decryption to terminate the SSL traffic so it can be inspected. So would you believe it or not, but 62% of the average network, 62% of the sessions coming to the network are encrypted. 62%. Let me ask you another question. What percent of malware today is encrypted? Over half. The reason why I mention this today is that these are today's statistics. These are not stats that are for 2027 or some deep, far-fetched, point in history when we extrapolate the data to try to come up with a scary, future landscape for you. These are numbers today. If you do not have SSL decryption or the ability to decrypt SSL traffic for inspection, you might as well take the efficacy of your firewall and of your network security posture and cut it in half. It's very important that you do this. And by the way, I'm sharing this with you. I'm not trying to sell you this. You know why? I can't sell it to you. This is a free service. SonicWall provides Generation 6 firewall users. We'll talk about that in a moment. But this is something that I want you to use. But keep in mind, when you try to decrypt traffic, it does take a while. It does take some performance, and that's why we have the Generation 6 appliance here. I did want to point something out here, but I'm not going to go into due to the sake of time. But I had a nice argument on Twitter for 6 days. So you should follow me on Twitter so you can follow these arguments and get involved. The folks at Let's Encrypt, they give free SSL certificates to everybody and anybody, and identified another phishing site spoofing American Express. And I told them, I said, hey, found another phishing site encrypted by you guys. And the leader of Let's Encrypt said, nope, don't care. In fact, SSL doesn't mean that you should trust this, just like it doesn't mean that your conversation with Satan is safe. This means that it's encrypted. So if Let's Encrypt is the certificate vendor of Satan, and they refuse to revoke the certificate, you can see why anybody can just go and get a certificate from these guys, encrypt the payload site. It's almost all ransomware variants are Trojans, and they pull down their payloads from these sites, often encrypted by Let's Encrypt. We're trying to look into the data this year to see how much Let's Encrypt plays into the threat landscape. And you'll hear more from us, hopefully, at the end of this year in our threat research report. So let's switch gears. Let's get off of encryption here and talk about the firewall. After you've used our free service to decrypt that traffic, the firewall is able to inspect it. If you have an older SonicWall device, the SSL decryption is a paid service. This is why we want you to use a modern firewall so that you are able to have the firepower and the capabilities to process all of that stuff. So again, with our Generation 6 appliance, all the latest appliance, we're talking about the TZ 300 through 600, the NSA 26 through 6600, and the Supermassive 92 through 9800 series, as you see here on the screen. This enables you to do all that for free. You have a lot of firepower and able to do that. And furthermore, you're able to use SonicWall's Network Sandbox, which I just spoke about a while ago when it comes to using this. So now when it comes to code, it's all about what you know and what you don't know, okay? In the case of the firewall is able to inspect it to tell you and to create hashes for the files. Now it comes down to gateway security to tell you whether or not this is good or bad. Within gateway security, you're able to whitelist and blacklist the files automatically based on what we know about it. In the case of using the signatures that are coming out of our capture threat research team, as well as what we're identifying through machine learning, we're able to create signatures because we know about these things. Okay? This is how we stop the known threats, which is going to be roughly 96 to 97% of all the threats out there today as of October 31st, 2017. In this gateway security, which is a big lump for all the different things that are out there. We put a lot of things into gateway security. We don't price these out into different things. We don't create little widgets where you can buy this and that. It's one thing so you can get everything done in terms of stopping the known threats. We use botnet filtering. Botnet filtering is used to stop command and control servers so you don't download payloads. So people don't click on some of these sites where a lot of data will go to. This is going to stop data from being exfiltrated to a command and control server. Okay? We use application control to not only control the applications and how things work and apply a lot of rules to firewall, but we can also use this to stop applications from being hijacked. We use intrusion prevention to stop known vulnerabilities, like Eternal Romance, like in Bad Rabbit, Eternal Blue in WannaCry and NotPetya. We use that in the case of the Equifax breach. Had they used SonicWall's intrusion prevention system, IPS, the Equifax breach, which happened May 10th, would have been stopped because we already had signatures in place as of the 6th of that month, 4 days before Equifax was breached, and affected me and my family. Furthermore, gateway security is how we stop the known malware that's out there. Gateway security alone blocks 7.2 billion with a B malware attacks on customer systems. To take a step back, intrusion prevention stops 2.6 trillion IPS attacks, always much higher volume than malware attacks. And this is collectively known as GAV IPS. If you hear some slang, if I say that term, you know what I'm talking about. But and to also prove the point, to prove to you how efficient this is and how well this works, GAV IPS blocked last year 638 million ransomware attacks on customer systems, SonicWall customer systems. Here's a bit of trivia for you. We don't have 638 million customers. Nobody does. That's a lot of ransomware attacks per customer system. But that's why we have these steps in place, so that you can be productive. Because again, it's not about the Bitcoin when it comes to ransomware. It's about the loss of data. Because it's a 50-50 chance you'll get your data even back. There's often chances they can exfiltrate the data, decrypt it themselves, to review it, steal it, etc. It's about the productivity loss. 1 in 6 small companies in the United States, when hit with a ransomware attack, are shut down for 25 or more hours. In case the lawyer that I just told you about, she was shut down for 50 hours on the first attack alone, 20 hours in the second attack. The total impact to her, loss of productivity and ransoms, was $50,000 US. That is not small. With that being said, we use this to stop the things that we know about. But the big question is today, because we processed 60 million new forms of malware last year, what do we do about the unknown malware? Because it takes time. We can identify today a new form, like say Bad Rabbit. We identified that. It takes time for us to analyze that, create a signature for that, and then to stop it on customer systems. We work hard all around the world, around the clock, to create those signatures so that you can be protected from that. But again, that's 114 new forms of malware every single minute of the day. That's 2, 4, 6, 8, and that half of a sentence alone. That's a lot of malware. How do we do this? How do we stop the unknown stuff? And this is where we use a network sandbox, like I talked about in that chain. And here at SonicWall, we have a thing called Capture Advanced Threat Protection. Capture Advanced Threat Protection, also known as Capture ATP. This is our network sandbox that stops all that unknown stuff. Here's how it works. I'll put it very simply for those of you who are not familiar with the network sandbox. A network sandbox is an isolated environment where you can run suspicious code to see what it does. So just like if you have a bomb squad in your home city and someone leaves a suspicious package somewhere in a shopping mall or in a shopping district or in a school, they can take that to an isolated environment and blow it up. They can open it, they can inspect it. And that's what we're going to do here. We have a cloud-based multi-engine environment that's going to process that code. All done by machines, not viewed by humans, and it's done very quickly. Let me ask you a question. How quickly would you think it would take for you to run a batch of code, suspicious code, in a network sandbox like that? Roughly 70%. How long would it take to do 70% of that volume? Roughly 70% of all files processed by Capture ATP in the cloud take no less than 5 seconds. It's amazingly fast because, one, we reserve a data. If someone has seen that file within the Capture customer base, we keep a hash for it indefinitely so you don't have to process it because someone's already gone through that process. So that being said, now keep in mind, I want to position something here or share something with you here, set this up for you. Go back to 2015 and go to Gartner. Go to the people who are talking about network sandboxing, Ross and Sullivan, whoever. Go back to 2015 and read the reports about network sandboxing, and those reports are going to be bearish. They're not going to be very positive. In fact, Gartner recommended that you would run all your network traffic through 2 different network sandboxes from 2 different vendors. So because the ability to evade them is so easy. In fact, Gartner told people in 2015 the ability to evade a sandbox is rated at about a medium. It's not that tough to do for hackers today. In fact, I see it every single day. I will open up a piece of malware and often find 6, 7 different forms of evasion tactics to get past security and network sandboxes. So we understood that. That's why when we built this, it was a multi-engine sandbox that can block until you have a verdict, the industry's first. This is why we won the CRN NetSec Product of the Year by 2016, that little icon on the top of your screen above that box called a sandbox there. That's why we won bronze for version 1.0. This network sandbox does amazing stuff. And we scan a broad range of file types, and of course within operating systems, Windows, Android, etc., so that we're able to try to find these threats in different places. And of course, good reporting and alerts. But let me give you some more detail here. Here's where multi-engine processing, to help you understand how this works and why it's important. Because, boom, evasion tactics are a big thing. Hackers are investing their time there, so we have to have multiple places in parallel to try to find this stuff because one engine may skip it. In fact, I'm going to show you a sample that evaded one of our sandboxes. But boom, imagine this. You go, you're playing badminton, squash, cricket. You go into the doctor the next day and your wrist is sore. So you tell the doctor, what's wrong with my wrist? So she takes a look at it. She bends it and does a visual examination. That's like our virtual sandbox here at Sonic Wall that we've built to give a visual inspection of the code. Secondly, she orders up an X-ray, and that's where we use hypervisor level analysis to look for malware because that's the first place malware goes is to the memory of a system. And furthermore, we use a full system emulation to take a look, almost like an MRI, getting down to the tissue and vascular level, so we can see all the different things that the code wants to do. So, with that being said, here's what the reporting looks like. Now, this is one of our test environments. Yours wouldn't look like this. But you can run your mouse over a specific day, or just hit that little filter over here that says Add Filter on the kind of the middle of the left-hand side of the screen there. You can create a filter just to show all the malicious stuff. Click on a malicious file, and you can see where it came from and where it's going. I've blurred out the destinations and the serial number here in this report for privacy reasons here. It's probably one of our internal sites, but just to be safe, I've blurred those out. But you can see where that stuff is, where it came from, where it was going, okay? Then, of course, we'll be changing these reports to give you some more information in future versions of Capture. But take a look at this. You can click on that XML file on the right. You can click on screenshots as well if you want to, and sometimes you see some good stuff. But by doing that, you're able to get more details of what's going on here within the ransomware. Let me share with you one of those. Here you can see a version of Cerber ransomware. Take a look at that XML file on the left. This contains valuable data. Take a look at all those different evasion tactics there. I'm counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different evasion tactics. All of these designed to get around Windows, network security, and the network sandbox. 7 different evasion tactics. This is not hard to find. Sometimes I see 4 or 5. Sometimes I've seen as high as 8. But this is very advanced code, all designed to get around my competitors. But it's not going to get past us because why? We have that multi-engine sandbox that's able to do all of that. And there on the right is a screenshot the reporting pulled up. And that's how we know it's Cerber ransomware without having to go back and then download it ourselves and take a look at it. So that's how we can stop the world's worst ransomware. That's how we can stop WannaCry in advance, even Bad Rabbit, which is, weaker code than this stuff. So with that being said, if this is what interests you, and if you feel this is what's right for your business, you can order up one single package. It's called the Advanced Gateway Security Suite. This is going to include content filtering to block good people from going to bad places, to turn off malicious sites. It's going to include that GAP IPS to stop all the known threats. And it's going to include Capture ATP, the Network Sandbox, the NetSec product of the year by 2016 by customer demand, so that you can stop all the unknown stuff. That little clock there at the end of the tube that represents the 24/7 support that this comes with, so that you will know what's coming into your network, so you can filter it and kill it, malware in different chains. So, and also, of course, with this, we're talking about because of the efficiency of the firewall, because of the efficiency of the cloud-based sandbox, you're able to run a very fast network with a lot of happy end users. So again, if you're running older firewalls, you're running a competitive firewall that belongs to one of my competitors, we're willing to help you trade that in. Just tell us and talk to us about that. We have a program available for you, okay? So that being said, it's called Advanced Gateway Security Suite, also known as AGSS. That's what you want to add to your firewall. So you have one package, one price, one expiration date, and one simple solution that's going to help you stop all that bad stuff. So with that being said, I want to leave you here with a set of questions. I'm not going to read through all of these, but I'm going to encourage you to do right now. If you're listening to this on our recording, to pause and take a screenshot, or just take a screenshot if you're listening to us live right now. So just take a screenshot of that. But I will give you a few questions to ask. These are questions to ask yourself as well as to ask your vendor, okay? So one of my favorite ones here is the second one. What is your remediation plan for identified security gaps? Let me ask you a more simple question. If you hear about a critical vulnerability, say from Microsoft, from Adobe or whatever, how quickly can you patch it? Can you patch it within 12 hours? That's a big question. So if you can't, we need to talk about having security in front so that you're able to resist. So you're able to buy yourself some time, I should say, before you do that. You want to know what is your internet connection that's coming to the network. What's the speed of the network? Because this will determine how well you can process data, specifically encrypted threats. Okay, this isn't a sales question. This is just a good performance question. Furthermore, is what are you doing for new threats like zero-day attacks, like new versions of WannaCry, Bad Rabbit? We saw many versions of WannaCry after the first one came out. Then, of course, what are you doing about zero-day attacks? Sorry, I asked that one already for you. The other one here is, how resistant to evasion tactics is your sandbox? You want to ask that question as well. So, again, here are some questions for you to take a look at. It's all about deploying the right stuff. So, with that being said, let's open this up to Q&A. And what questions do you have? I see one down here. It says, can the NSA 3600 have ATP? Yes, it can. The NSA 3600 can have capture ATP as long as you are on Sonic OS 6.2.6 and above. I believe 6.2.9 is what's currently being web posted. It is out for general release. I think 6.5 is out for early release. But that being said, the answer is yes. Do you have more questions out there?
Thank you, Mr. Brook, for sharing those thoughtful insights. Now, dear delegates, it's time to take your queries. You may use the chat window to post your questions to all panelists, and they'll be answered accordingly. We give you a moment.
Brooke, hi, this is Aplak this side, back again. First of all, thank you so much for taking us through your presentation. Obviously, very insightful, a lot to learn, a lot to take, a lot of precautions here, a lot of strategies that you help us understand. So before we get questions from our audience, typically because from things change from geography to geography. From an Indian context, typically what is the size of organization you think should consider network sandbox like the one that you just mentioned?
Yeah, network sandbox it's based on kind of your volume that you're seeing on an average day. We are kind of naturally, I want to recommend a network sandbox to almost anybody, but of course, even our lawyer, with a two-person law firm, now has capture DP in place. But if you are an office of maybe 5 or 6 or more, I'm going to recommend the network sandbox for you.
Okay. And
of course, if you want some more information, I was going to say that people can go to sonicworld.com/capture to learn more about that product itself. Okay. What other questions do we have?
Right. So I don't see any questions from. Okay, there is one question from a gentleman. He's asking, is Sandbox a USP of Sonic? From a gentleman called Shiva. If you just kindly, he's asking whether this is a unique selling proposition from Sonic World, the Sandbox.
Yeah, so the Sandbox is a collaboration of our own proprietary technology and also a partnership between VMware and Lastline. If I can go back to a few slides here, I'll try to to show you this real quick. Wait 1 second. Try slide 16. Nope. This chart here. So in the case of virtualized sandboxing, this is Sonic World's proprietary technology. The X-ray, which represents hypervisor level analysis, we're using VMware, and for full system emulation, we're using Lastline on the cloud-based sandbox. So this gives us a great combination. So for example, and why we use this combination here, because we get the best view of what Mel wants to do from top to bottom. But if you take a look over here, you can see we have different engines, engine alpha, beta, gamma. In the case of server, it's able to pass engine alpha. So that's why we use that, and that's the partnership that we're using. We also have another engine that's going to be coming out in the near future, no specific timeline and deadline here, that is developed by Sonic Wall itself.
Okay. I know probably a question from my end. I don't know whether it's an easy one to answer for you, but can you kind of get us into where do you see the next big attack wave coming?
Well, in the case of the next big thing, ransomware is, for lack of a better term, sputtering, like an old engine. It fires and it quits, and it fires and it quits.
Right.
So 2016 was this gold rush. Everyone was doing ransomware. I'm surprised my grandmother wasn't doing ransomware. Everyone was doing it. And also we had large volumes, amazingly large volumes. Locky, Tesla crypt. It was amazing. So the numbers are going to, this year is not going to look the same. By this point last year, we had cataloged 400-something or more million ransomware attacks. That was before Lockheed went on a spree, okay? So ransomware, it's a two-part answer here. Ransomware is going to come and it's going to go. Every time there's a new vulnerability, we see a large spike, just like WannaCry. Eternal Blue is out. Boom, everyone's going to try to use this, right? In the case of Eternal Romance, we're seeing that kind of coming back a little bit. People are trying that with the hard-coded Windows passwords. But here's what we're seeing. The next big wave of malware is now going after credentials. They want to steal your credentials. And here's the thing is I'm talking about it. We're talking about it here at SonicWall, but the media is not talking about it. Why? Because when they steal your credential, there isn't a ransomware screen. You can't quantify the impact like you can with Bitcoin and ransomware. So credential theft is the next big thing. It's happening right now, but here's the good thing, the good story. You don't need to attend another webcast. You just need to apply the same disciplines that I talked about in this webcast, either through SonicWall or through my competitors, although I don't believe my competitors are as effective. That being said, apply these disciplines and you'll stop credential theft in its tracks as well.
So, Brooke, just help me understand, how is identity theft and credential theft different from each other?
Well, identity theft is going after the individual, right? In that case, in the case of Equifax, as an American, we have a Social Security number. They have that now, right? For me, my date of birth, my address, my salary history, that stuff, right? That's where they can go out, get a loan in my name. They can try to go out and do things. I've frozen my credit, and I've had protections in place to stop that. But in the case of credential theft, they're either trying to steal my Windows license from my device that they can sell on the black market. They will try to steal the stored passwords in my browser, specifically Firefox, Safari, Opera, and Internet Explorer. Chrome is much more hardened towards that, but then again, they're going after that as well. So good password hygiene is important, but again, they're going after passwords because you and I, we all use several applications within our company, right?
Absolutely.
And many times we use the same password. So that they're going after that. They want to find the network password. That will give them the holy grail.
Okay. I have a question here, Brooke, for you. There is gentleman, Mr. Prasad Damaraju. He's asking, would like to know how it works with mobile devices. And I think it's a very pertinent question because India has a very significant number of mobile applications getting access to enterprise applications these days. So he's asking, are your solutions, do they work in conjunction with mobile devices?
Yes. So this is another, you'll hear about this coming up, and we're vocal about this. So this is not a hidden thing, but it's not here today. But it's going to be one of our next big releases, is we're adding that network sandbox, the Capture ATP that I talked about, to our secure mobile access line of products. So like I mentioned before, from the beginning of how malware gets into an organization, either coming in through spam emails or something. Go back here, a couple more slides. So in the case of the spam and that we're seeing that, we're using email security to stop threats there. In the case of exploitation and also accessing servers, we're using secure mobile access, and that's where that comes into play. Because a lot of us, we bring our own devices into the network. We go out in the world, it's our phone, we download things, and we bring that back in. We view websites and clickbait, etc. So in order to stop that from infecting the network, use secure mobile access and Capture ATP there to try to stop that.
Okay. So, Brooke, I think let's just reach out to Sagar. Sagar, do we have any voice questions from the audience?
Certainly, so I'll just open up the line.
Sure.
So ladies and gentlemen, to ask any questions over the audio, you may please press 0 and then 1 on your telephone and wait for your name to be announced.
And again, you're welcome to contact us, sales@sonicwall.com. If you want to learn specifically about ransomware at SonicWall, go to sonicwall.com/ransomware. And then, sorry, I have an American phone number on the thing there. If you come to our website, you'll be able to see the phone number that can be appropriate for you in India.
Right. So, Sagar, do we have any calls, or probably because I have one leading question before we call it a day.
So we have one indication on the audio. It's from Mr. Prasad Damaraju. The line is unmuted.
Sure.
Hi, this is Prasad here.
Hi.
Yeah. Because recently there was a ransomware like Bad Rabbit, okay, which comes with a website. When we browse any website, the Adobe Flash Player needs to be updated. Okay. In this case, how we are going to prevent this type of ransomware? Because there is an update which shows is an updated Flash Player, or sometimes Java also it may pop up. How we are going to avoid this type of how your system is going to check this type of Adobe Flash Player, or whether it is genuine or.
I think
so currently our sandbox. Yeah, so it's kind of a two-part answer. I'll say the first part: Java and Flash files, not the updates, but just the files themselves. We don't currently analyze with the engine, but we are planning on that. That's definitely something for our roadmap. But the good answer in the case of Bad Rabbit and these other things, these are executable files. All these updates are all executable files, and we scan a wide range of executables. In fact, I would say on an average day, close to 50 or 60% of all new forms of malware found in the sandbox are executables. So that's how we're doing that. So if someone does fall for the fake Flash update or some other type of Java update, we're able to run that and process that and give you a verdict pretty quickly.
Because now, as per the Bad Rabbit, it is the instance of malware distinct with the Adobe Flash Player installer, which comes with the HTML and Java files are affected through website. Okay, because when we are having the sandboxing, if that is not able to detect, because these are all the executable. If you see, when we get a pop-up, it is an executable file which gets downloaded. Okay, and any user who is getting this update is going to run the update or Java update also. Once when it goes to the sandboxing, whether it is going to just check because it is a exe file, it's not a document file or it doesn't have any macro. How are you going to prevent this type of?
Well, that's also, if it's a Java or Flash file, the engine is not able to process that at this time. But that's why we use a multi-layer approach, and that's why we're using the content filtering to stop you from going to sites that you shouldn't be at. Two is we're using gateway security, because if it's a form of malware, if it's malicious, there is between a 99 to 97% chance we already know about it. So we're going to stop that at the gateway so the capture engine doesn't have to process it. So, and then of course we have endpoint antivirus as well, so that if it does make it to the network, or through the network onto the endpoint itself can stop it as well. We just inked a deal with Sentinel-1, which will give you more advanced next generation capabilities for the endpoint, so that if in fact the endpoint does become infected, you do have that rollback option and the ability to segment that PC or that endpoint from the network so it can't spread.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much for the good, difficult question.
Right, Prasad. Thank you so much for that question. Sagar, do we have any more questions coming in?
No, sir, we do not have any more indications on the audio.
Okay. Probably a last question, Brooke, from my end before we call it a day. It's like, in the Indian context, there are instances where, a company might have performance issues when they try to decrypt the SSL traffic. What are the turnaround ways to mitigate that?
Yes. So in this case, I definitely. So one, you want to take a look at your network speed, but two, take a look at the ability of your firewall. Of course, 4 years ago, this wasn't a thing that a lot of people were focusing on, but was definitely something SonicWall was focusing on because we knew that we would be here today dealing with this here. So take a look and make sure you right-size that firewall. Especially if you're running an older device that doesn't have the firepower to process this modern amount of encrypted traffic, you want to talk to us about that. So that's typically where I want to go with that answer, is right-size the firewall for the network, if not increase some bandwidth coming into the office.
Okay. Yeah, I guess that's it from my end at least. Sagar, if you have any more questions, please feel to open it up for the audience. Otherwise, that's it from my end. Look, once again, thank you so much for logging in and sharing your views on an area which I guess a lot of people are keen to understand, learn, and develop their strategies to counter that. So once again, thank you so much from our end at CMR.
You're welcome. So again, you can follow me on Twitter at brchelmo to carry on that conversation publicly, as well as reach out to us sales@sonicwall.com.
Sure. We'll do that. Sagar, if there's anything else, otherwise, would request you to kindly close today's session. But before you end that, I would request from our end and from SonicWall's end to kindly request all the participants to kindly fill in the feedback form after the session gets over.
Certainly, sir. On behalf of SonicWall and CMR, I'd like to thank all the participants for joining this webinar. Also, there will be a pop-up window in a few seconds on your screen. Kindly fill in the feedback form before ending the session. We hope you have spent useful time with us. Thank you, and you may all disconnect now. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.